Hello, everyone. We're waiting on a few more people to come in, but we're going to get started. My name is Marae Freeman, and I am a licensed professional counselor.
All right, my name is Sade Gar, and I'm a licensed professional counselor as well. Marae, where do you work, or what do you do?
So I work full-time as a school counselor, so a professional school counselor at an elementary school, but I also do private practice part-time. So I see anywhere from maybe 5 to 7 clients a week. I don't have a large caseload, whereas she has a lot of clients she sees in a week, working full-time, doing that. But my goal personally was I never wanted to do private practice, which is working for yourself as a therapist, like having your own clients, not in an agency or a hospital, or not working under someone else's business. But I never wanted to do that full time because I just feel like, for me, I don't have the capacity to talk to people like that all day in sessions. So I like the flexibility of being able to be a school counselor in the day, but also work as a private practice counselor in the evenings, weekends, whenever I have that time.
Okay, and I am the opposite of Marae. I did not want to work for a school or an agency or in the community or any of that. I've done that before for community agencies. So I started my private practice right out of graduate school.
When I say right out, after we were taking our comps and our final test, she was getting herself ready. When I tell you, this woman hit the ground running. Like, I didn't start private practice until probably about 6 months after we graduated. She was like next day. Yeah. Actually before, ready. She was
as soon
ready.
As I got approved, I was ready to go.
She was hit the ground running for sure.
But I guess that's one of the great things about our profession. We have, in order to be a licensed professional counselor, you have to go and get your master's degree. So it's a lot of schooling and internship experience and things like that. So I think it's important that everybody knows the steps into getting it, in case it's something you want to do, or when actually looking for a therapist. Every therapist has to be licensed by the state in which they reside in or they choose to practice in. So just kind of a few little things to kind of look for. But like I was saying with Marae, the flexibility about our job is that it looks different for everybody, and it's different lifestyle choices according to your lifestyle, how you want to pursue therapy. So Marae, if you want to tell them a little bit of the goal of the Q&A today.
Yes. Well, before we do that, in case anybody wanted to know, what did you get your bachelor's degree in?
I got my bachelor's degree in psychology and Bible from Dallas Christian College.
Okay. And you don't really, I got my bachelor's degree in English. I thought I was going to be a teacher before being a school counselor, but I think the great thing about our program was that I never actually really intended on being a private practice therapist, but once I got into this program, and our program had 3 different tracks: mental health, marriage, couple, and family, and then school counseling. You were marriage, couple, family?
Yeah.
And so when on the school counseling track, I was still able to take my test for my LPC to do private practice. So I never thought about that initially. My goal was just always to become a school counselor. But once I did that, and the rigorous academic criteria that our master's program had allowed me to step into that and get my professional license as well.
Absolutely. And we had to take a test with our school, which we both graduated from Mid-American Nazarene University, year of COVID, 2020.
2020.
So we didn't actually have a graduation.
Yeah,
but
we were almost there.
Happy to complete everything and get it done. But yeah, so we kind of went into, she went into school counseling, and then I went into private practice at an unusual time, which was an experience. And I feel like I'm blessed, and Marae feels like she's blessed. So because of that, we've been seeing clients with internship including for about almost 5 years now.
Yeah,
almost 5 years now. So we wanted to just open it up to the community, to our social medias, for people to ask just general questions about therapy. There's a lot of myths out. There's a lot of misunderstandings and things. So We have some questions that we're going to go over, and then we also are going to be allowing you guys to post questions here. We'll try our best to get to them. But we just want to thank you, and for the people that we do have online. Before we get into the raw content, if you guys could share,
Yes.
share.
Share this live, yeah. Share that right now so that we can get more people in the live. And like she said, we put it out there for people to ask questions. There's a lot of people who are starting their therapy journeys. There's a lot of people who are against therapy, and there's a lot of people who don't really know a lot about it. So we have some questions here. I wrote them down that people have asked us, and we're going to try to answer those. We are no experts. We are not. I mean, we are experts. We are experts in what we do, but we do just what we say as a disclaimer. You can take the information for what it is, and if it helps you and benefits you, then that's good. But we're not saying this is a thing that's going to cure you. This thing that's going to fix you. This is a thing that is universal for all. Let's just put that disclaimer out there.
Absolutely, and this is not a therapy session as well.
So no, because y'all have to pay us.
Yeah. If you're already receiving therapists, make sure that you follow up. Like I said, the uniqueness about our line of work is it looks different, and you can find a therapist according to your style and your liking. So with us answering those questions, we're going to talk from our educational background as well as different modalities, which is ways that we may go about treating clients according to our own individual experiences mixed with our education. So just keeping that in mind as well.
Yeah, the way we approach things, and it might be different. But I like what you said yesterday when you were promoing the video about how a lot of our work is done in private. You know, confidentiality, all that good stuff. We work with clients individually. We're not posting videos of clients and putting them on social media and things. So this is a good way for you guys to kind of get a little bit into our lives and see what we do. So the first question is, and these will all remain anonymous. If you have sent in a question, we're not going to say who it's from. But can you self-diagnose OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and does it need to be treated? What do you think? Do you have any clients with OCD?
I have a couple of clients, and when I do their assessments, OCD is a part of it. So do you want to answer first, or you?
Go ahead. You go ahead and answer first.
So with OCD, it looks different with different people, and there's different degrees to it. For the most part, as far as self-diagnosing, there are assessments that you could get and just check questions, yes or no, and answer them, and it will give you a score whether you have OCD or not. One of the things that we use as a form of diagnosing is the DSM-5V now, the revised version. That's the most updated one right now, so we use that. So when we go into diagnosing, we actually look at what the qualifications are in those things, and most of the time with most diagnoses, you want to see that they are showing up present in more than 3 different areas in your life. So if it's just at home, probably wouldn't put an OCD diagnosis on it, but the difference between diagnosis and symptoms is that all of us could have symptoms of numerous,
and we do.
We have symptoms, So I would say be a little cautious with self-diagnosing, because there are more things that go into it that we look into outside of just, are those symptoms present? How are those symptoms presenting in itself and in your life, and how is it impacting you, as well as what settings are they appearing in?
And how often are they? And this is kind of general. I know the question was, can you self-diagnose OCD? But this is general for self-diagnosing in general. You know, you can get on TikTok. You can get on Google. There's a lot of places where you can find information. You can even go to the DSM-5. But when you're trained, when you're clinically trained, like professionals like us and others in our field, like she said, that's the way that you're going to actually be able to diagnose. You can look at the book for what it's worth, or look at all your symptoms on Google, but it's like, how long has it persisted? What settings is this in? Is this a cause from one specific thing? You know, things like that. So you can have obsessive compulsive characteristics and traits. It doesn't mean it's a disorder. Same thing with like PTSD. You can have post-traumatic stress symptoms or things like that, but for a diagnosis it needs to be very severe. And the second part of that was, does it need to be treated? I mean, if it's
a diagnosis, then yes, it needs to be treated. With symptoms, it depends on what those symptoms are. There could be some quick things that you could do to kind of help with those, not be as present. You want to add to that at all?
Yeah, I was gonna say if it should be treated if it's affecting your everyday life and it's affecting how you're able to function in life, absolutely. And that's with most with all diagnosis. The second question is, my therapist is starting to feel like a friend. Is that weird or is that appropriate?
I'll let you answer that one first.
Well, and I can also speak from experience. We both have our own therapist. I don't feel like my therapist is a friend, but I do feel connected with her outside of just a clinical level, because she's also helped me, mentored me, given me opportunities being a therapist and her being a therapist. So that way, so we can relate and connect on that way. And she's like old enough to be my mom, so naturally some things, but I think it's important to define that. It is important to define that line and be very professional. It's really up to your therapist to set those boundaries as a client or a patient or whatever. You're not necessarily going to know those boundaries, and that's up to the therapist or the clinician to set those boundaries. Like, hey, I know we feel comfortable in these sessions, especially if you have a black therapist. I have a black therapist. I feel really comfortable showing up my authentic self and feeling understood and heard. But I also know that it's not appropriate for me to call her at 3 a.m. or it's not appropriate for me to be like, oh, I'm going to come over your house. Like, no, things like that. I think it is very important to be comfortable and to be able to be authentically yourself. But it's not appropriate for your therapist to be your friend.
Gotcha. Yeah, absolutely. And I will agree with what Marae says. And also I will add to that is, I think it's normal for you to feel like your therapist is your friend. What we do is we provide a safe, non-judgmental environment for you and for our clients. So if I'm doing my job well, then you will feel like I'm your friend, right? That means I could talk to you about anything. I'm okay to let my hair down some and be honest and transparent with you. So that is actually a healthy thing. But I will say, depending on different therapist styles and the way that they go about therapy, some could be more of I don't want to use therapist terms like Freud, or they could be more psychoanalytic, just like all business and serious.
In the mind, yeah.
In the mind. And that may work for somebody else. And then you have different kind of therapists who may be solution focused. And their primary job is just to give you an answer to help with whatever you're concerning. And the relationship building may not be as important. So I think it's always important to understand those things.
Yeah, person-centered.
Yeah, you have person-centered.
Really focused on those relationships.
Absolutely, absolutely. There's different techniques. So with some techniques, yes, for the most part, you should feel like they're your friend. But I do want to just clarify the boundaries. Although you feel like it may be your friend and that might be the only person that you have to talk to, your therapist isn't your friend. And it's a big difference. Your therapist shouldn't be going to dinner with you and going to the club with you or not even church with you. Like, it shouldn't be a relationship outside of the therapeutic office or the therapeutic relationship, unless you guys could be at the same place but it wasn't planned or intended, and hi, bye, and that's it.
And that happens a lot, like smaller rural areas where maybe the therapist does go to the church. That's not an ideal setting where you would want to be so enmeshed or interconnected with your therapist, but there are some settings where there's 300 people in the town and the therapist just so happens, to go to the same grocery store or the same church. I saw someone ask about going to, like, inviting your therapist to your graduation or your sporting event, like a teenager. Yeah. Your sporting events. What's your take?
So I would say, with as therapists during our postgrad, we have to get supervision. So we've discussed this in supervision before, and there are different approaches. Some people feel like if it is going to be important as far as with the client's development in the plan, that it is okay to show up and be a support, and others is like, no, let's keep it to the therapy room. I would say for me, I mainly keep it to the therapy room, but I'll just ask them to share the experience with me. Yeah. Talk to me about the graduation. How did it turn out? Show me pictures and things like that instead of actually going there, because at the end of the day, we have to keep confidentiality as well. So if we're at your graduation party and nobody knows who we are, and they ask, "Oh, how do you know them?" We can't,
I can't
legally
say
say I'm her therapist. You get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So it puts us in an awkward situation.
But there's those clients who, like, let's say you did go, they'd be like, everybody, this is my therapist. And it's like, okay, yes, that's their choice to let somebody know whether or not you are their therapist. But also, like, I tell my clients sometimes, especially living in the community, I'm like, if I see y'all at the store, I'm not going to speak to you.
Yeah.
And it's not like it's a bad thing, I'm being rude or anything like that. It's just that I cannot identify that I work with you. I am your therapist. Absolutely. Now, you come up to me and say, hey, and if you see, hey, that's my therapist. Okay, I mean, I'm not going to confirm or deny it, but hello. And it can kind of seem like, why? In our sessions, they talking to me and I'm crying to them, and then you're standoffish in public. But it's like, we have to keep those boundaries, and it is hard when you work in certain communities and environments. Absolutely. And that's why I appreciate working as a school counselor, because I live in the area, in the city that I work in. So I do get to see my students sometimes at the store. And that's obviously a different scenario. So I enjoy being able to be like, oh, hi. So, outside of school, because that's the only way I'm able to really say, hey, I'm their school counselor when their parents are like, who's this lady who knows my kids?
Exactly. It's a little different.
But exactly. But no.
Yeah, and I know I've saw clients at receptions and times when I'm like in turn up.
It's hard.
And my client is there, and it's like, awkward situation for me and the client. But some of those things you can't, like, you're not going to leave an important wedding or important graduation because a client is there. So it's not like we got to ditch and dodge and things like that. But I think to actually, as a therapist, saying, okay, my daughter is turning 1, I want you to come to the party. That's more of a friend role and not the therapeutic role. Although your therapist probably helps you through the pregnancy, the labor, the parenting, postpartum, and all those stages in life, I still don't think it's appropriate, in my opinion, to go to the daughter's first graduation party.
And there's no need. There's, like, if you think about it clinically, there is not a need for me to show up for your daughter's this. There's not a need for me to show up for your graduation, because if I'm here supporting you clinically, I can't support you clinically at the graduation. So the point, you have to think about the reason why you want someone there. And I know we're using, like, showing up as an example, but they talked about being friends. And if you're a friend, you'll show up for somebody.
Absolutely.
We have to think about why you want us there. If you need me there as a therapist, then clearly we need a different type of setting to do that in.
And there has been times with, like, exposure therapy when you work with people with anxiety, and maybe you may go to a setting with them, but it's still kind of like private. Like before, I went to the mall with a client and helped her try on dresses. I wasn't trying on the dresses and in the room, but with her anxiety. But it's private there. So if I'm in a room and I'm like, okay, use your technique. How do you feel now? Let's go ahead and step out and just kind of take some deep breaths. You get what I'm saying? Yeah. So I have done work outside of the therapy room with clients in public settings, but making sure that it's private and it's not like I'm meeting up with my homegirl or my friend or anything like that.
Or even I've been suggested to, like, work with the child or a teen, like go to the park or something, things like that, where they need to sometimes kids need to be, it's like play therapy but outside. They need to be doing something so we can kind of dive in, kind of like a distraction, so we can really dive into the stuff we need to, but I need to let you get down the slide, but we can still kind of make it fun. So
absolutely,
it's kind of about preference, but we have ethics and we have boundaries. It's not illegal to go to a graduation or a birthday party, but it's ethically not advised.
Absolutely.
A third question we have is, are there seasons, like money aside, like financial reasons aside, where therapy might not be the best thing in that time?
Do you want to answer that or me?
Short answer, no. I don't think there's a time where you don't need to be in therapy, because especially even if you're going for, like, maintenance, like I have some clients who are in therapy maintenance. I don't see you often, maybe once a month. Hey, we check in, we work through some things where we went weekly, bi-weekly, and now we're at, like, okay, we're just doing our good check-in. And sometimes things may fall apart in that month, and we've got to do some intensive stuff in that month. But I do not personally think there's a time where you don't need some kind of check-in on your mental health by a professional. I don't think it could ever hurt.
Okay. So my answer was slightly different from Marie's. I feel like with my experience, because there are clients who come to me, and I know you may have had to have these conversations and like, hey, maybe this isn't a good time for you. Sometimes
like they're not ready and prepared. Or,
they're not ready for the process,
yeah.
or sometimes their symptoms are preventing them from coming in.
Mm-hmm.
You get what I'm saying? So if you're, and I know it, sometimes it may be impatient.
Yeah, right.
So
you need more
situations where you have, where your mental illness is
impairing you from
being able to, then I would say that's not a good time. And sometimes when you really can't prioritize and do the work because you're so busy in other things. Now, do I think that's best that you don't prioritize it? No. But if you're honest and real with yourself during that time, like there was one time with I have 4 kids, y'all, and they all had sporting events back to back to back, and then I'm running my own practice. I have to practice my own self-care, even though therapy is a part of it, but the schedule just didn't allow for me to go to therapy, right? In that situation, for me to go and I'm not even really able to be present, or I'm missing all the appointments, and I will say that no, that's not the best thing. But most times I feel like that therapy is good for being proactive when things are coming up, to prevent things from coming up, and also during the process of things, and then after. And like Marae spoke about, it doesn't always have to be weekly. With therapy sessions, some people come twice a week. That's more of an intensive. 2 to 3 times a week is intensive. Sometimes it's once a week, sometimes it's bi-weekly, then it'll be monthly, and then maybe every quarter, right? Or just checking in case by case. So I think with each situation is different. But yeah, I do think in certain situations it may not be the best option at the time for a person.
I agree with that. So if I was, when I read, and I see we can interpret it different. When I read it like where therapy might not be the best thing. I think therapy in general, the term and the concept is always going to be a good thing. But Absolutely. I agree. When people are not ready, when people are not going to do the work, then yes, I don't think that therapy is appropriate if you don't have the time or the effort or the desire to put in the work. But do I think that it's always beneficial if it's being used? Then yes.
Correctly. Yeah.
So I see what you're saying.
And I will give an example really quick. I had a client who was coming to me, and she was, most of the time she got there late. And like where the session was almost over, so there was like only maybe 5 to 10 minutes a session, and you really can't do much
at all
but catch up, right? Or there was times when they were coming on the wrong day. You get what I'm saying? And certain things like that. So after like adjusting and trying to adjust the schedule and help them get the treatment or the care that they need, I did that, but it just kept conflicting with my schedule, kind of getting some things off balance and stuff, and it was more of a stressor to the client that they couldn't make it, they couldn't be there. So I just told them it's fine. Sometimes this happens, like,
and then they feel worse and more anxious, like, oh, I'm letting you down. It's like, oh gosh, it's worse than when you started off.
Absolutely. So it's like, maybe we could take a break right now, but whenever you're ready to come back and whenever things have slowed up, then go ahead and come back, right? And that same client was able to come back and be successful. So
there definitely are different circumstances. And I feel like one of the identifiers for me is like when clients who I see regularly, and the way I schedule, I think you do it differently. I schedule usually in the next session, like in the session I'm in at the end, we schedule. And I think you probably do stand-in appointments.
Yeah, I do stand-in appointments.
So like the difference is like Billy Bob for her comes every Tuesday at 5. For me, my clients aren't on a set day or time, but once we finish one session, we schedule their next session. And I have one client who is monthly, and she's like, okay, I'll let you know. And she usually does. But I think that it is, when you haven't heard from a client in a while, it's telling of things going on in people's lives, right? Like, if there are a lot of clients who always show up, or if there's somebody who's canceling a bunch and they already, Billy Bob has a standing appointment, and Billy Bob is definitely fictional. I don't know.
Why would I use Billy Bob?
I don't know, but I'm just letting them know this is not a real person. I do not know her clients or their names, but and he's not showing up, and you might think like, oh, something's going on. I think a lot of times we just do that as humans, where when we really need to be going to therapy, or we really need to be going to church,
Uh-huh.
really need to be praying to God, is the time that we're like, I can't do it. And that's like sends off signals or like a red flag of like, oh, this person might need more help than they're kind of letting on.
Okay.
So just being like intuitive kind of sometimes
Absolutely.
to clients.
And if you guys have any questions, go ahead and, are we going to be able to read them? Put them on there as we're asking. Maybe it'll be a follow-up to something we saying, or maybe some clarifications. So if we see them, then we'll tend to them. If not, we'll just keep going down for the questions down the list.
Yeah, but we're watching for it if y'all have some questions. Do therapists take time to prepare for each client? Like outside of or before a session?
I'm gonna let you in. I'm gonna let the school counselor answer that one first.
So yes, and I will say sometimes I will say for my children, teen, adolescent clients who are not adults, basically, I think I have to prepare more for them than for other clients, because then I have to coordinate with parents, and if I want and I'm also only telehealth, so if I want them to have a worksheet or we're going to work on something, then I have to send it to them, then I have to make sure that the parent makes sure that they get it, and I have to make sure that they're in the session with the right paper. Things like that are things where I have to prepare for clients if we're going to be working on something. I know I want to work on something the next time, but that's usually in my like follow-up plans. But I personally don't prepare for each client. Like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. I do not prepare before. And especially for some, I don't even know how you would, if you have clients all day, like somebody who works, I don't even know how you would do that.
So the appropriate answer is that for each client that I have, I do an hour of preparation work before each session. That's what we were trained to do. Most people don't, and I'm gonna be honest, I don't either.
And them 10 minutes after, like,
okay, so like, I take the 10-minute time
to get ready
for the next session. But I will say at different stages, I do have to do more preparation. So when the first initial client that I'm looking, best practice is to look at the intake paperwork, look at what things you filled out, some of the assessments and things like that to prepare for the session. Some people like to have a preference to do that before me. I like getting to know my clients, and then I go back and look at the session. So
like the intake form?
Yeah. Okay. I don't like seeing it first. I want to kind of get my own feel. Okay, so the intake process looks like whether it's you going in person with paper or electronically, that's going to ask some general questions about your symptoms, if you had therapy before, if you're on any medication, if you have previous diagnosis and things like that. Sometimes it'll be anxiety tests going out, depression tests, and trauma and things like that. So for me, it's procedure that I do a regular intake that consists of anxiety and depression and trauma. Those are the three basic things that I do, and then I have questionnaires, like small questionnaires. If I know that a client is calling and they're saying they're dealing with they're bipolar, they're diagnosed with bipolar, or they're dealing with suicide ideation, or they substance abuse, then I'll give those assessments in advance too, right, so that they can fill out. So looking at that requires preparation, and then for me it depends on where I'm at in my treatment plan. So a treatment plan is like the plan of action after the assessment phase and all those intakes are filled out. You get to know your clients. Treatment plan is like the plan of actions. How do we plan to help the client get better, help them reduce their symptoms, right? So during the treatment planning stage, I do more prep work. But when I'm seeing a client on a regular basis, or they've been coming for a while, I really don't have to prepare much. So it will look like if they're struggling maybe with anxiety, I already have anxiety sheets and techniques ready. So I'll kind of go over in my mind before session, hey, you want to go over this, this, and this, and that lines up with my treatment plan. So that's how I practice. So I have been in other places and at other sites during internship experience where they actually want you to do an hour to 30 minutes before with each client. We all were required to do professional hours.
Yes, but I'm trying to think of, like, if I actually did 30 minutes to an hour, I don't think I would need 30 minutes.
We don't gotta say it on here. But yeah, so there are some prep work, and sometimes I do watch a video. There are certain things, religious practices and culture things that I may not know. So if that is something that a client is coming in, say they're Buddhist and I don't really know much about Buddhism, right? I will research and prep and kind of get an understanding, because I don't want the client to have to explain all that to me. Why? My job is to kind of help assess them and look at their symptoms and give them something. So I don't want them to have to explain everything. So I may do a little background check, a background knowledge or information. Sometimes you may, if a client approves and sign off a release of information, prep work could be talking to another family member or a friend, but that's
or
a doctor. So that's only with the client's written consent on a release of information that I'm going to do that. So some prep work looks like that for me.
Or even, since you said that, like with parents, depending on what age my client is, if it's a non-adult client, I either sometimes have their parents help with the intake, because when they're young, or they just have another perspective. And so then when I go over in the intake session, I say, if the parent filled it out and the client is a child and they're coming in, I say, hey, your parent filled this out. I'm going to read through it and tell you what they said to the client. But you tell me if you agree with this or not, like giving them that option. But I think where it's talking about, do we take time to prepare? We do take time, but I think what I do more often than not is I have my clients preparing, not like first session because they have to do the intake before the first session. But I have them doing different things, or I'll send them different videos or homework. I definitely give my clients homework, not all the time and not everyone, but if I want you to work on utilizing these skills outside of our session, I want to give you realistic tools and things that are going to help you. Now, I tell my clients, I'm like, it's not like school. If you don't do it, you're not in trouble. Don't try to hide from me and not come to session because you didn't do it. It's not about doing it or not and getting an A or an F. It's about these things are going to be helpful for you if you use them. And that's how I present homework with my clients. But that's for them to prepare themselves more for session and just life.
So what about videos that you may have them assigned to them, or
like to watch?
Yeah. Do you watch them first sometimes to refresh, or you kind of already know the ones that you choose?
Yeah, I have watched. If I've seen whatever I recommend or have done, I have read or watched it first.
Absolutely.
But
has there ever been a situation where you didn't know and you had to do a little research? Or?
Where I didn't know something, yes. But so if I send it to them, yes. No, we do prep. We do. But it's not
like a...
It's not always as extensive. Sometimes it is very extensive for certain clients. It's not a one-size-fits-all.
Absolutely.
But I don't want people to go into therapy thinking like, oh, they don't care. They don't even think to remember. I personally have a good memory. Yeah. So when my clients... I think therapists in general, my sister sent me a video about how like therapists, they just remember like, oh yeah, you told me your dad's birthday was this, and some random stuff, and I'm like, I really have that memory that I'm paying attention to every little detail that my client is saying. So
absolutely,
that could be the prep too. How do therapists care or assist their clients outside of sessions? So kind of similar to the last question.
Yeah. So basically, outside of sessions, I would say prep work, watching videos. I'm like one of the most coolest, geekish nerds that it may be. Like, I'm very down to earth, chill, and I make sure that I'm authentically myself in sessions. So with my kind of personality, it may seem like, dang, she just maybe naturally. Some of it is natural, but for the most part, like, I'll read books. I'll watch videos.
Like you naturally got it. Just like you naturally know.
Sometimes sometimes I have to read books. I'll watch videos. Outside of session, assisting them is kind of like more what Marae was talking about, giving assignments for them to do outside of session and bringing that back in. So we could practice a skill here. Now I want you to go back and practice it outside. So that's some of the things I care and assist for my clients. Outside of sessions. And then I also find a lot of resources, like for instance, if there's teen agencies or programs going on and their focus is like on school and mental wellness and things like that, I would refer I will actually go to the event to make sure this is a good fit if I'm
Right.
taking a teen client there who has anxiety and depression, making sure they're not going to get teased, they're not going to be put on the spot to have to speak in front of everybody and
It's
things
safe,
like
making
that.
sure it's safe.
Yeah, so I will go and actually participate or go to some things before I send my clients there. I'll go and actually talk to a group therapist, make sure that I know them or I talk to them and build a relationship with them before I send them there. So that's a lot of things that we do as therapists, is network with other therapists and learn about their programs and things that they offer to see if it may be an additional support to our clients if we don't offer
Yeah,
those services.
it's always important to kind of vet out those resources that we give our clients, just because we don't want to cause any more harm. We want to keep them safe physically,
Absolutely.
obviously, but also emotionally.
And
So
to add, it's not that we feel like therapists will cause harm, but sometimes you have different modalities and
Yeah.
ways of treatment that may work. So
or that may not work,
or
for
that may
our
not
client,
work,
and
yeah,
we know our
absolutely,
client. You know,
yeah.
it's like with your family or your kids or people who you know already, like closely. You know, oh, if this is, like you said, if this is going to be a place that's going to ask them to talk, they're not going to want to do this, and they're
gonna
not
cause
going to
more.
come back next time. You know, just
Absolutely.
kind of knowing your clients is going to be helpful.
Yeah.
So when I think of assisting outside of sessions, it's always important, you know, boundaries. Keep talking about that. But I always let my clients know, like, if you need anything, reach out to me. I always give a disclaimer, like text, email, anything is not the most secure form of confidentiality. I can keep everything as safe as I can, but just proceed proceed with caution how you respond or share things through internet, via the world, all those things. So I tell my clients to reach out to me if you need anything, or if you have any questions, or if you're doing some type of exercise or homework I give you. My clients know that they are welcome to reach out to me outside of our sessions. However, I'm not answering something at midnight. I haven't had anybody text me or call me at midnight. I'm not 911. I'm not an emergency. So if you are in a crisis or you're in an emergency, I always tell my clients, 911. I'm not an emergency on-call therapist. But they also know if it's 6:00 and they're like, oh, hey, can you sometime, or whatever the case may be, I am available to text with them outside of our sessions. And they know that, like, if something good happens and they're like, hey, I just wanted to share this thing happen, I'm rooting for you. I'm rooting for all my clients. So that's how I show care to them outside of session, that they have access to me and I am available to them within reason. And if I'm not, they understand that. But I do try to get back to my clients, or I always get back to my clients within 24 hours.
Wow.
But if they're they're not always they don't always need something, but yeah.
I get it.
But if it's late, for me, my boundary, I'm not texting and talking to clients late. So
Yeah.
but if they send me something 9:00, I'll respond the next day.
So mine is a little different from Array's because we do different things. So more school counseling, and then my thing. And
No, that's not school. That's mine.
Okay.
Oh yeah, school.
Okay.
No, kids
They
in school
gotcha.
they don't have nothing. Y'all do not contact me outside of school hours. That's not appropriate because you're children anyway. But that was for my private practice class.
So for my private practice, baby, you hit me up if it's you're in a crisis. So I do handle crises. But my rule to thumb, and this is kind of how I look at it. If I'm in a session with another client, I want to give them my undivided attention, and I have a intense schedule. So I may see 7 clients in a row. 8 clients in a row some days, right? So I don't give the option for them to contact me at any time. What I do give the option for them to do is to submit an email and update me on something before the next session, right? So if something comes up they want to celebrate, or they're struggling with something and it's not a major struggle, go ahead and send me that email. I'll let them know that I will read it, but I may not respond depending on my schedule. But I will definitely make sure that when you come to session, I'm prepared to discuss it for you.
So what you gonna do if you can't stop them from texting you?
No, but my clients they don't text me.
But what if they did?
They won't text me because first of all, I use
tell them
simple
do not.
practice, and that's the text messages and things like that. My clients have a good understanding that in the past, at the beginning, they did text me some, but I come from a social work background, working at Wyandotte Center and things like that, where the teens or the adults had access to my cell. They don't get that; they get my business number.
Right.
My clients know the only time they're texting is if they're having suicidal thoughts and ideations, if they're at risk. Outside of that, teens know don't text Miss Sade and bother her. And my adults know the same thing as well. But because I want my clients to know how to navigate that stuff without me. You get what I'm saying? And to most of my clients, I deal with a lot of anxiety. So anxious people, sometimes they need to tell you like right away, right? So I'm helping them practice your skills, do this, and calm yourself down. If that works, you don't need it. You realize that it's not as urgent to contact me, and you can wait until tomorrow, the next day, or next week if it's not an emergency. So that's just kind of how, because I have kids as well, so I don't have the flexibility or want them to be texting me while I'm like, I'm watching a movie, I'm letting my hair down, I'm chilling with my kids. I don't want a text message from a client at that point in time. So that's just kind of how I handle it for my boundaries. But like I said, Moray's way works for her, and then mine's work for me, and all therapists do things differently. You do have some therapists who allow that, but for the most of the time, it seems like she has a good place with boundaries. Most of the clients, like, to me, it's been a slippery slope with them keeping the boundaries when I allow that.
Mm-hmm. I think that my thought process comes from, can you still see it? Oh, okay. It comes from, like, I guess the way my therapist is. So I've been seeing my therapist since 2018, so a little bit right before I was able to start practicing. And and she is there we go. She is accessible outside of session.
Gotcha.
So I think with the boundaries wise, that's how I've seen it
And
work
it
that way. So I was like,
you,
I just adopted her way.
And then you also say you don't have like a set time weekly, right? So it's kind of like y'all schedule.
Right, we schedule. Yeah.
So that makes more sense to that.
Right, you're like, hey, y'all can wait.
My clients know y'all gonna send me Tuesday at 3, and they have an option if it's something urgent that's not life threatening or death in the family or things like that.
Yeah.
Then leave a message or go on the portal and book a sooner appointment, because they have the option to switch it as long as it's within the net time frame.
Right.
The right time frame. So that's kind of how I handle it. So I told y'all this is like real different, and it works according to like the therapist.
So what works for you? Exactly. Another question was, is there something wrong with the person that goes to therapy for years? Like, is therapy meant to be a short-term ordeal?
Okay, so in my opinion, I actually have had clients who has been coming to me for 3 years. I think that's the longest, is 3 years. And I would say, no, I don't think there's anything wrong with it. We see people for a lot of different reasons, and there's different styles of therapy as well. So for some conditions, some like borderline personality, there are some mental illnesses or conditions that the person is just you're gonna be in therapy, need therapy for the rest of your life. It's some situations and conditions like that. There's other times when maybe a client is coming and they have like a lot of childhood trauma. So if I have a team with a lot of childhood trauma, plus they have school, anxiety, bullying, self-harm, and things like that, that might take a couple of years for them to build the trust with us, because when people have a lot of trauma, a lot of times it's the issue dealing with a lot of trust, right? So for them to allow a person that they don't know to come in and help them, that relationship has to be built. So I would say that no, I don't think it's wrong with people who go to counseling for multiple years. I think it depends on the person. It depends on the type of therapy that's being offered and what the symptoms are. And everybody symptoms reduce at different levels and at different times. Mm-hmm. And some people I had clients who came in for one thing, but things just kept popping up. And I think all of us have probably experienced a time in our life where we like, man, another one. Another one. So where you think you're done and you're in a good spot, then maybe a death happens, or you think you're good and then somebody get diagnosed with cancer that you're very close with. Kids with mental illnesses or health conditions, all those life situations pop up, and it may cause a person to extend their therapy. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, I think that when I think of therapy, I think ongoing, long term in general, like just like I said, eventually getting yourself to maintenance, which is like not super often. But I also think about, like you said, intense clients who have intense mental health conditions. And so, like, I don't think that there's anything wrong with going to therapy forever. I guess when I reflected on that question, I was like, yeah, I guess some people do go into therapy thinking, and when you do a lot of solution focus, which is,
I was going to say solution
I do solution focus a lot at working at the school because I don't have a lot of time with the students, and I can't keep them out of class for 2 and 3 hours doing intensive therapy when they need to get back to class. Like, that just doesn't work for them. So I do a lot of solution focus there. I do solution focus in my private practice as well, but it's not with the intent of terminating a client, like, okay, we got to get this done. No, just some people like to set goals, and that's what I help them with. I've only formally terminated one client.
Can you explain to them what
terminate? Like, when we're done, that means we have wrapped up, we have completed all of our goals, and we have finished therapy. Now, I've had some people just fall off and not come back for whatever reasons, and that's a whole nother topic of like therapists trying to figure. I mean, I know me. I'd be like, whatever happened to that? I don't know. That's why I think about it. Because like, you never said that. I don't know. But I also have less clients too.
I'll follow up.
I do. And sometimes they fill it out. And sometimes they don't. You just got to be okay with that. But yeah, I've had one like formally terminate where we have met all of our goals and we are done with therapy and you've accomplished what you need to accomplish.
Gotcha.
But the rest of my clients, I guess I should put that on my intake. Are you looking for short term? Like, is this something you're looking to finish?
Part of the treatment plan, well, my intake process, and when I'm doing the treatment plan, I kind of give them a time frame of like my guesstimate, educated guess on how long it may take with their treatment according to their symptoms, right? Like I said, life circumstances have threw that off some, but we just readjust. So the treatment plan for me is a living document. It's not just a set in stone, boom, bam. But I have had clients that do. So you said you've had one. I probably had at least 30 clients officially, like,
and they never came back.
They'll check in and then they good. Like, they're like, oh, sorry. Like, after a year of checking in.
Okay.
And it's like, no, you're doing everything. You get what I'm saying? So they don't come back on a regular basis. I have had clients who have came maybe for 6 months, and we were done with all the treatment plans. They met their goals. They were no longer on the certain meds they came in with. Those symptoms were like reducing, they were flourishing, right? And then something happened, so they start coming maybe for 3 weeks and then stopped again, like we were done, right? So I think with each client it's different.